Well, time passes. We moved from Texas to Colorado. My son was still getting therapy. I mean, I was listening to the adults with disabilities, but those other voices were bigger, more powerful, because they're the professionals. They've got all those letters behind their names and all that kind of stuff. And by now, my son is 6, and he's in the 1st grade. There's a wonderfully inclusive elementary school. This was way back in the early 90s, and so we know that as far as inclusive education, we know it can be done. We just got to do it. And all the little kids, I'm driving my kids home. I got the carpool, and my son's sitting over here next to me in this booster seat, and my daughter and the other kids are in the back seat. And all the little kids are talking on the in the car. Oh, when I get home, I'm going to go play Nintendo. Or when I get home, my mom's taking me to ballet class, or whatever. And they said, Benjamin, what are you going to do? And he'd look over at me and say, Mommy, what day is it? And if I said Tuesday or Thursday, he'd say, I got to go to therapy. Mommy, I'm going to go to therapy. I know, but you got to go. Right? I mean, mother has spoken. This is your life. Your child with disability. Therapy is your life. And after about 6 weeks of this, he just got more upset every Tuesday and Thursday. And finally one day, just tears streaming down his face, and he's just crying so hard he can't hardly talk, and he just was screaming. And he says, Mommy, he says, I don't want to go to therapy anymore. He says, I've been going all my life. He says, I just want to go home after school like the other kids. He says, going to therapy does not make me feel like a regular person. Because he felt like a regular person at home, and he felt like a regular person at school. And he was playing t-ball, and he was the only kid with a disability on the t-ball team, and it didn't matter, it wasn't a big deal. He was in Cub Scouts, so he felt like a regular person everywhere but at therapy. And that was the day that we got out of what I call disability world. I mean, disability world is a world of special and of services and of segregation. And Benjamin did not go to therapy ever again. Now, some people think, oh, she's bashing therapists. No, we need therapists. Therapists can help us to help our kids do what they want to do, but we need to use them as consultants so that we are not sending our children. I mean, they don't need to, just like we're therapy moms, we have therapy kids. I mean, I realized my son spent more of his time in therapy than doing anything else, and that at age 6, he already knew that. And I thought how incredibly sad that my son, that's how he saw his entire life up until age 6. It's like, that's really eye-opening and powerful. So we took what we learned from therapists and incorporated them into beneficial activities throughout Benjamin's day, and not in the form of home programs, because Benjamin said to me, Mommy, no more home programs either, because kids don't want to see their parents as therapists. They want them to be mom and dad, And so we just, instead of doing water therapy, just get in the hot tub and play, or the whole family can go swimming. What so many therapies do is they take a child out of his or her natural environment, and we put them in this artificial environment where, again, we're working on them. And I'm not, people equate that, well, you're saying don't get medical treatment. No, of course our kids have to get medical treatment. You got to get a shot in the arm. It's going to make the baby cry, and you have to do that. But those kinds of events are not the same as this routine, ongoing, therapy 3 times a week, and that we set goals for children that they're never going to be able to accomplish. I mean, we need a dream for our kids, but the dream is for them to live a wonderful life. And what adults with disabilities taught me years ago is that you don't have to walk to have a good life, but you might need a power wheelchair. You don't need to talk to have a good life, but you might need a communication system or a device of some kind. You don't need to do all these functional things. And so most therapies are focused on essentially trying to force a child to achieve functional skills. And I learned a long time ago to say, if he could, he would. If Benjamin could do it, he would do it. No amount of therapy is going to make him do something that his body cannot do. And even if he wants to do it, cerebral palsy is a brain injury at birth. We can't make that go away, okay? I mean, it's like, sort of like having a stroke. And some kids are born with Down syndrome, and some kids are born with autism. And, if their bodies are wired differently or their brains are wired differently, we can't, working on somebody's this and that and the other is not going to change that. And I think that we cannot allow our children to grow up feeling that they are less than. And I realized years ago that we are very good, and I say we collectively, we as parents, we as therapists, we as educators, we whatever kind of interventions we're doing, we're very good at being mechanics. We're very good at working on people's bodies and brains, and in the process we can cause great harm to their hearts and minds. And I think that we need to focus more on their hearts and minds, that they know that we love them just the way they are, that they're perfect just the way they are. just like, I'm perfect just the way I'm. I've got, gray hair now, and I've got this, and I've got wrinkles, and, if somebody came and said, Kathie, we need to put you into therapy, or we need to do these treatments on you so that you'll, I would be offended and say, get out of here. We don't give children the opportunity to do that. The other big thing about therapy is that when I was in the Partners Program and, was meeting 35-year-olds and 50-year-olds, or, different ages, different disabilities, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, whatever, and they're telling me that they received therapy all their lives. At that time, not only should I should have listened to them right then and made some changes in my son's life, but it took me a while to get my head screwed on straight. But I did start saying, wait a minute, because as parents, when somebody tells us, give your child therapy 2 days a week, and then we say, well, more, if 2 days a week is good, more is better, so we want more, and nobody discourages us from that. Everybody, oh yeah, well, you want to do more? Yeah, great, you'll be a great parent. But I started realizing here, we do that thinking, well, this has got to be good for our kids. And we have this image in the back of our heads, this idea, and nobody tells us this overtly. But we have this idea that a lot of parents don't want to admit this, but it's like if we really are honest, we will admit it. We have this idea that if you give your child enough therapy throughout their young lives, that at some point in the magical future, they won't have a disability anymore. If we didn't believe that, then why would we do this? Why would we subject our children? Why would we subject ourselves, our entire families, to these regimens and rigorous therapy? And, sometimes it's, ABA, 40-hour-a-week therapy, and it, changes the whole family. And so when I was in the Partners Program and I met these 35, 45, 50-year-olds with developmental disabilities, and they told me that they got therapy, from the time they were born or whatever until they were, 25 years old or something. And you look at them and now they're 35, and they still have cerebral palsy, or they still have Down syndrome, they still have artic problems or whatever. And so at some point we have to stop and question, do these so-called therapies work? What is the purpose of them?